Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Whew, a lot of plugs and a lot of holes. Kirsten Davis with the City of Spokane and current acting Deputy Director for Neighborhood Housing and Human Services.
Excellent. Nice to see you, David Sackman.
Hi, I'm Dave Sackman with Catholic Charities Integrated Case Management Program, and I'm a co-chair of the Singles Subcommittee.
Excellent. Dale.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dale Brees. On the COC board former lived experience position.
Excellent. Jan Simpson.
Jan Simpson. I am the CEO of the Spokane Eye Clinic and the business community representative on the COC board.
Excellent. Pam Haley.
Pam Haley, City of Spokane Valley Council member.
Good to see you, Pam. Ronald.
Robert
Hello,
Levin
Ron Nelson with SNAP. I'm the new homeless coordinator here.
Oh, excellent. Welcome aboard. Shannon Boniface.
Shannon Boniface, Catholic Charities, Managing Director of Crisis Response and co-chair of the Family Subcommittee.
Sharon Stoneman.
Sorry, mic problems. Sharon Stone with Catholic Charities. I'm a vice president here of Crisis Response and helping to support shelter operations. And here is a guest.
Tim Crowley.
Yeah, good afternoon. Tim Crowley, Spokane County.
Angela Chapman.
Good afternoon, Angela Chapman, Transitions, COC board member, lived experience.
Dr. Lutz.
Good afternoon, Bob Lutz, board member representing health and public health. Thank you.
Kelly Burnett. Kelly's here. She's with the city. Eric Robinson.
Hi, Eric Robinson, a program manager for the HEN program at Goodwill, and I'm also a co-chair with the Singles Subcommittee with Dave Sackman.
Excellent. Cassandra Brown.
Hey everyone, Cassie Brown, City of Spokane, CHHS Grant.
And Matt Davis.
Matt Davis with the City of Spokane. My pronouns are he, him, and this is my last week with the city.
And is there a call-in user 1 on my screen? And you wouldn't know that because you're probably on the phone. Who have I missed?
This is Ariel Anderson, staff with the City of Spokane Valley. I'm their housing and homeless coordinator.
Oh, nice to hear you, Ariel. And then do I see Mark? I didn't introduce you, Mr. Matkey.
Hi there, Mark Matkey, CEO of Spokane Workforce Council, COC board member representing workforce development.
Did I skip you, Edie?
You did, but now you didn't. Edie Rice-Sauer, Executive Director at Transitions. I'm a guest.
Excellent. Did I miss anybody else?
Yep. This is Cecily, the Youth Subcommittee Co-Chair and ACI Coordinator. She, her pronouns.
I'm Lindsay. I'm the Youth Engagement Specialist for the Youth Advisory Board, as well as the Youth Rep on COC.
And hi, I'm Amanda Seberg, the SNAP Homeless Services Manager.
I am Kim McCullum from the head office.
Oh, hey, Kim, how you doing? Great.
Just fine, thank you.
Great to have you here.
And I'm here as a guest. Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
All right. I'm sorry I missed so many people. Everybody, the screens move around, and I can't wait till we can meet in person in September. But so that means we need to stop the trends, though, that are happening, which have been very worrisome. And Bob, I'm going to create a spot for you just to kind of get your perspective real quick at some point. Consent agenda is the meeting minutes that were sent out. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Then I would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Pam Haley, I move to approve.
Jan Simpson, second.
Thank you both. Any discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
So Kirsten, we're recording this, and my understanding was for future, we're not, is it my understanding, I just want to clarify, is that we will or won't have Kelly here taking notes?
We won't have her, temporarily. We need to get some things off of her plate, so.
Okay.
So either I will be doing that, or someone else, will be, but, just trying to get the staff, other things that aren't quite as, time consuming that anybody that can type can do, so. Brenda, are you recording?
Yes, I am recording.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so let's go to additional approval items. We have 2 items on there. One is a new board member. Brenda, do you want to give a 30-second, just quick update?
Sure. So Daniel Clemmy is here today. Thank you for joining us, Daniel. And so it is with great pleasure that I would like to announce that Daniel will be joining us as our newest COC board member. Daniel comes with a wealth of experience that with 30 seconds, I cannot do it justice. But I will say he is the current president of the Landlord Association of the Inland Northwest. And in his application, he has the experience and the passion that will is a great addition to the COC board. And I'd like to welcome him. And he, as well as Mike Stimson, will be going through a COC board orientation soon. And any COC board member that would like to join them and have a refresher course, they will be invited as well. So welcome, Daniel, and welcome, Mike, to your first board meeting.
Thank you. Any questions on Daniel? With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve Daniel as the newest board member representing the landlord spot on the board.
This is Eric.
I'll move to approve.
I second Angela Chapman.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Pam. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Welcome aboard, Daniel.
Awesome.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Daniel.
I also sent out, oftentimes in the past, applications for housing, especially low-income housing tax credits, and sometimes housing trust fund projects, asked us for certificates of consistency. Last week, the executive committee approved 2 9% low-income housing tax credit projects and verified that they were consistent with the 5-year plan to end homelessness. I sent along a questionnaire for a Volunteers of America project in collaboration with the Spokane Housing Authority. They've asked us to certify consistency. I reviewed it. It met consistency. Are there any questions on that project? With that, I would entertain a motion to allow me to fill out the certificate of consistency with the 5-year plan so they can turn that in with their grant application on August 10th.
This is Pam. I will move to approve.
Jan Simpson, second.
All right, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, thank you all very much. I just want to comment, Pam, it's great to have you here. And we're not hesitating on the first and the seconds on motions. It's appreciated. And Jan, thank you too. And before we go into the city report, I know this is Brenda and Matt's last COC meeting. So I just want to personally express my appreciation for all of the support. I'm probably in contact with Brenda at least 5 or 6 times a week. She gives me immense amount of support, and the board immense amounts of support. And Matt, the work you do out in the community has been appreciated, and I know you'll continue to do it at the state level. So I just wanted to say personally, thank you. And I I'm just very sad that you're both leaving the city, and wanted to express that. With that, we're going to move on to the city report. The first part is, Debbie, we got you 20 minutes at the front of this. And I know these could go over, and that's what happens at these meetings. And this is on the FIY 20 awards and provider discussion. And with
Yes.
that, I will hand it over, and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay, so yes, so the fiscal year 20 awards were automatic renewals because there was no competition. There was not a NOFA issued. And these are awards began August 1st. So on Sunday or Monday, whenever that date is, and they go through July 31st, 2022. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So is everyone seeing a spreadsheet? And can you see numbers?
Yes.
I heard a yes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm seeing Ben nod his head. So this is what the awards are for this year. And then I totaled them so that you could see by type of project, how they're broken out. The total FY20 award is $4,148,698. And then this is the award by project. The projects total $3,624,115. And then CMIS award is $172,126,000. And then because the city is a UFA, we were awarded $110,494 for UFA planning. And then $110,494,000 for UFA costs. And then the city admin is $131,469,000. So the total award is $4,148,698. And if you look at that by the type of project, we have one project, which is Women's Hearth, which is supportive services only, and that's $21,055. It's a very small contract, unfortunately. And then we have two projects that are transitional housing, and that's Catholic Charities. I just drew a blank. Shannon, transitional housing at St. Margaret's Shelter Transitional Housing. And then we also have VOA Alexandria's House, and those projects total $134,861,000. And then we have our rapid rehousing projects, which total just over $1.5 million, $1,516,596,000. And then we have our permanent supportive housing projects, which are almost the same total as our rapid rehousing. It's $1,561,312,000. And then we have two coordinated assessment projects, which are supportive services only as well. One of them is our Catholic Charities, our Homeless Families Coordinated Assessment, and the other is SNAP, Single Adult Coordinated Assessment, and they total $390,291. And so that brings us back to the 3.6 million. So this is how the projects for FY20 are allocated, and we're in the process of getting back budget line item details from all of our providers and beginning to work on issuing contracts so that they'll be able to bill right away in September when the first invoices are due. So first of all, does anybody have any questions about that?
and I can't see while I'm sharing, so please just speak up.
Debbie, this is Dale.
Yeah.
Hi, and these are really flatline numbers from the prior year, right? There's no increases or anything. There might be.
Actually, that's not true, Dale. Some of the projects increased based on fair market rents. These amounts all came from HUD. So some of them did increase if they had rental amounts included in them, rental assistance. And some of the projects actually decreased a little bit. For instance, CMIS is getting less this year than they did last year. And we don't know why that is. And transitions, excuse me, Women's Hearth is getting a little bit less than they did last year, and we don't know why. HUD determines these numbers. So the numbers did fluctuate a little bit from last year. But that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that.
Yeah, so I did hear that because I know we had been flatlined for FMR rates for the permanent supportive housing programs. So that did increase overall?
It did increase a little bit.
Okay,
not as much as it needed to.
Yeah, okay, with the rent rates?
Yeah,
okay.
So
okay.
Don't get too excited.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so I don't want to mislead you, but it did increase a little bit. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and the reason this is yellow, is this project, WA 353, had been a Catholic Charities project, a rapid rehousing project, and it is in FY20. It's going to be a YWCA project serving domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence and their children. So this project is it will continue to be rapid rehousing. It'll continue to be the amount that HUD awarded, but it's moving from Catholic Charities to the YWCA. Any more questions? I think it's really important that everybody serving on the COC board is aware of this and understands it. And if you have questions, you ask them. One thing that we're going to be doing is reviewing the spend down on a quarterly basis and looking at reallocating money if any of the projects are way behind on their spending. Okay, I will stop sharing my screen then. And the other, oh, there we go. I was trying to do the wrong thing. Okay, and then the other part of this is Sharon asked me if we could, as part of this, if the providers could talk about the challenges that they've had this year with the housing market and with hiring challenges and some of the issues. And so I'd really like to turn it over to Sharon so that she can lead a discussion with the providers.
Thanks, Debbie, and thank you for squeezing us into the agenda. I know there's a lot of important topics that we need to talk about every month. So yes, really, I wanted to just open up and give you guys a little bit of an update on the landscape of what we've been experiencing specifically in our programs and especially with rapid rehousing with our tight housing market right now. So for fiscal year 19, as I think we've all been experiencing, this really intense challenges with hiring. There's just a lack of applicants that are applying for jobs. And of course, we're seeing challenges with trying to cultivate and maintain our existing base of landlords. So what that has led to for fiscal year 19 is that unfortunately we as an agency, and we're not the only ones, but money has been left on the table. And that is just not something that's ever happened for us. It's completely unusual. And obviously we know that absolutely impacts our COC and our competition. So I really wanted to talk about, as a COC, just to hear feedback from folks, what they've been experiencing, want to talk about solutions that folks might have moving forward. I really am excited to see Daniel as part of the board now, because we really need to have that kind of engagement at the landlord level as well, to really talk about, you know, other options or solutions to cultivate and maintain those landlords. But really moving into fiscal year 20, you know, obviously our market's not looking any better. So really want to have some intentional conversation about what we can do as a COC to really help support and provide some more available options, because what's going to happen is not only does it impact our, you know, rental market for Rapid, it's going to backlog our emergency shelter services, our transitional, as households are trying to move out and there just aren't options available. So again, I just wanted to kind of open it up. I know Jen, you and I talked last week a little bit with Shannon about this very issue, but wanted to see if we can get some more discussion around, like, you know, options and solutions. And really wanted to also request, as we have this discussion today and potentially moving forward, to have it as a standing agenda item. I think it's incredibly important that we continue to talk about these things, because again, as we know, the money is so tight on these competitions, and we take it very seriously in looking at how any money on the table impacts our ability to maintain these critical services. So again, just kind of wanted to open it up and see if anyone has any other thoughts or ideas or want to share what they've been experiencing, so we can collaborate around this, these topics.
Shannon, Sharon, I'll chat for a minute. Just from my perspective, you know, I just had a meeting with the Housing Authority with their Section 8 vouchers as well. And they have all of these emergency vouchers that they're going up to 120% of the fair market rate for those units. You know, I don't know if you all are aware of this, but the YWCA's model has been that we've used rapid rehousing to bridge families with Section 8 vouchers. So we try to kind of track what voucher eligibility will be for those units before our survivors move in, so that they can just kind of slide into those vouchers. And so for us, you know, I'm looking at least raising my FMRs to match those incoming vouchers that are coming into the system, which will also allow survivors a little more wiggle room with shopping for units. Not a lot more, because 120% of FMR is still hard to touch what is going on with rents in the community. However, it's kind of a way to at least level the playing field a little bit. The other thing I wanted to talk about were moving incentives with rapid rehousing dollars for landlords. You know, those hold fees, or whatever we could call them, to secure those units, those incentives for those landlords to secure those units for participants, or, you know, can be really huge, especially for individuals whose rental history doesn't look awesome on paper. And so that's another idea to think about. I know Catholic Charities and myself have talked about shoring up some paperwork across the system, so that we're all using like the same rent reasonableness form for HUD to justify those expenses. But those rent allowances are going to have to go up, or I see us leaving.
So Jennifer and Sharon, are a majority of the rapid rehousing dollars going into rental apartments or rental homes? I just want to make sure we're real crystal clear where the shortage is.
Shannon,
I mean, the majority of our families are renting apartments. It's hard to find homes that are within FMR, because you also have to pay for water, sewer, garbage usually with those.
And do you partner with, is it all market rate housing you're going into, or is it also like low income housing that Community Frameworks has and Spokane Housing Ventures?
It's wherever we can find available units within the rates that we're allowed to spend with them.
Okay, so it's both. Well, and we're not anywhere close, like the supply is at 0.5%, rents raised over the last 12 months by 30%, and that was with an eviction moratorium in place. So rents are, and we're number one in the nation for rent increases. Somebody just put in the chat, was that a solution?
I think it was me, Ben, and it wasn't a solution. I was just echoing Sharon's sentiment in that I agree. I think being kind of her counterpart on the singles end, it killed us at SNAP to have money that we had unspent and had not spent. And that was a brand new thing to us this year as well. And it wasn't for lack of trying and Debbie trying to help us get money moved around. It just perfect storm of all the horrible circumstances that came out. But not only do we realize that it's a huge impact on SNAP, but the community and we take it very seriously. So I think it's a fantastic that we're talking now and trying to brainstorm now rather than 2 months from the end calling Debbie and saying, oh my gosh, what do we do?
Well, and I think this is such an important thing for the COC to do together because it's really a big kind of a core responsibility of the COC board to be looking at this together and problem solving and being creative. And so I love that Sharon brought this up and said, can we put this on the agenda, because it should be a part of what we do on a regular basis, and the COC board needs to be a part of doing this. And when we look at reallocating money and spending, it needs to be a part of what we're doing because it's so important. It's a issue of the system. It's not an issue of individual providers. It's an issue of the system.
Yeah, but I don't think it's an issue of it's an issue of the housing market where we don't have enough low-income housing. Federal and state dollars haven't kept control with it. We're having a problem with the $15.90 getting out the door on the local tax increase. And then we just don't have the areas that are zoned for multifamily because rich people don't want apartments in their neighborhoods. And that's the reason, right? We have a very suburban development code. We have some very rich neighborhoods that don't want poor people there and will fight tooth and nail. So we can't, I guess, short of building more housing, low income and market rate, what can we do?
Well,
so I'm going to jump in here for a second. So I will say that it is a core responsibility of the COC board to help with that collaboration amongst all of our providers. I think what Sharon and others are seeking from the board is a little bit of help and insight. And the purpose of the folks on the COC board and why they were chosen is because they're intended to be able to leverage resources. So when we have situations like this, we can at least have a discussion about what other resources are available, what things do we need to do, like you're talking about, Ben, to at least come up with creative solutions to address as best we can, because folks still need to be housed, right? We can't just have them sitting and say, well, market. I think we at least need to try to come up with creative solutions. And I think having that sounding board and someone to, share those things with is helpful to the providers, especially when they go back to the different population subcommittees and have those very frontline discussions about how do we effectively end homelessness for whichever population they're focusing on. And we really need the board to be able to lend an additional layer of insight to them. And I know that prior, we used to do this all of the time at the COC board, and it was really helpful. We were able to come up with solutions. So I think, in the goal and purpose of, furthering our 5-year plan and how we're achieving those goals, steps we're taking is helpful. And it also helps inform everybody when it comes to the COC consolidated application, because that's where we talk about all of our strategies to end homelessness. How do we effectively or rapidly rehouse like families experiencing homelessness, really get into the weeds of that application. And so it's important that the board is aware of all of these different things, because when I come to you here in a few months and ask you, hey, we're going to run through all of these strategies, give me your feedback on this before it goes to HUD. It's really helpful if people are a little more informed. And I think it would help support the providers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ben and everyone, and don't forget, I think, we should have aging and long-term care present too. Just because there's a 1.5 to 2 year wait for the aging population, the baby boomers in our community, to get into those kind of facilities. And so You know, I mean, there's in my world, there's talk about even going back to residential settings, you know, common living arrangements, just for temporary housing, even for those communities, people that can function, you know, and maybe even want that social support and such, getting creative on that end, which might take some of the pressure off of the aging population.
Daniel, can we come present to the landlords and get new partners?
I would love it if we could set up something. I think a good time to do that would be, so I previously worked in the SSVF program at Goodwill and as well as at the Spokane Housing Authority. And I noticed that a lot of landlords really have a big heart for vets. And I know it might take a little bit of time to put together, you know, whatever you guys want to put together, which I will certainly help with. So if you wanted to think, maybe, I know this is a little ways away, but I think doing something in November around Veterans Day, I could help you guys get 60 to 100 landlords that will attend and listen to your programs, about your programs. And I also wanted to say, there's this HUD magazine called Evidence Matters, and it's really good. And they had some really good ideas on landlord incentives that I was reading about. And just like, for example, I believe it was in Massachusetts, there was a town that had just a 24-hour call line. So if you housed somebody that was in a rapid rehousing program or a voucher and you had a question as a landlord, rather than maybe waiting for like the housing authority to open on a Monday or something like that, if you had a question, they could call this phone number. And I guess a lot of people really like that. I think that Ben, you're absolutely right. The prices are going up, and so if we want to kind of keep them artificially low to get people housed that are in programs, I think working together on some sort of incentive structure, and not just to get people in. I think it's important too that the rents aren't raised dramatically after a year if they are on a voucher, right? So I was thinking something along the lines of if we had, and I was trying to think about how to make this more equitable for both the tenants and the landlords. So maybe something along the lines of like, let's say if the landlord doesn't raise rent after a year, maybe there's a $5,000 amount that the landlord and the tenant split, right? And so that would be kind of a locally housed mitigation fund or something like that. I'm more than willing to help people on some of this stuff. And HUD has a lot of good info, but it is done with some places that have just a ton of resources. It's hard to compare it to Spokane, honestly. But yeah, I'm here to help you guys.
So
yeah, Daniel, I think those incentives, you know, help with those landlords not increasing those rents because they'll get that money up front instead of tacked on to the tenant's rental amount.
But
To keep them at a voucher level.
okay, so that's one thing. A small group of us could work together to put together a meeting with the landlords in November, but work on incentives as well. Who's the expert at the city on what incentives are allowed or not using COC dollars? Because it seems like we need to probably have Jennifer and Sharon, and I don't know who else in the room with Daniel and myself, and then somebody from the city that can tell us if those ideas are bound by COC regulations or not.
Well, Debbie's our expert. And I think, I mean, the HUD is the strictest funding source we're going to have. So we need to look at leveraging additional pots of money to complement what we're using COC dollars for, because yeah, I mean, there definitely could be something we're missing, but very strictly regulated as far as what kind of options for funding uses are available with COC. So it's really about, do we have flexible pots of money that we could bring to the table to pair with these creative ideas for landlord incentives. But yeah, Debbie's our expert, so she would definitely need to be at the table, and obviously Shannon, because she's running the program. I'm just speaking today.
I can volunteer Stephen Miller from VOA. He's not on, but I know we have a lot of PSH units, so I think Stephen or Rayanne should probably be participating. So I'll volunteer them.
Okay, and then Debbie, I know you. Sorry, Jennifer.
My only other quick thing was, at the same time, having consistent documentation across rapid rehousing for the same program, so that when landlords are getting these documents, it's familiar. We're all using the same forms for them, so it reduces the confusion. while we're looking at these changes and updating forms.
Having a unified set of paperwork across all of rental assistance programs was something that the Landlord Liaison Network had talked about for many years, but I don't think ever activated on. But I worked with them at the outset to develop something of a work plan, and that was a major goal. I have not staffed that committee in some time, so I'm not sure where they're at with that. But your great minds think alike, Jen.
So that's one thing we can do, all of us together. The second thing is I saw this in the notes, and I'd like to write a letter to the city council supporting the implementation plan they came up with for the housing action plan that they adopted on Monday, because there are many things in there that'll increase supply, and so that we're not so desperate to come up with incentives, but we can, if we increase the supply, we artificially stop the soaring rents, and then maybe there's more than a 0.5% vacancy rate, and people will be more likely to partner with us. And then Shannon, you mentioned you reached out to Housing Connector. They just need money, right? And so
they're still interested in coming over here. They just they would need an investment. And I haven't gotten more details. I mean, I'd like to understand what $400,000 to $500,000 annually looks like. What does that mean? How does that break down? But I do think that, I mean, it's a significant investment, but based on what they presented to us when they came out here, I think it would be very beneficial for our community.
Yeah, they double the $5,000 that the state puts aside for damage deposit. They guarantee the first 6 months rent. So it opens up the door because they're actually offering the incentive and coming in with it. So Housing Connector seems like a real answer. So we need to add that to our letter to the electeds, that we really need to tie back these clogs in the homeless system back to the housing at the end point.
Right. Well, I know we were going to reach out to some stakeholders as well, just to get their feedback, so that could help support that letter as well, Ben.
Okay, so Sharon, I'll reach out to you about developing the letter so that we're like really crystal clear in our language on how this affects the system and turns money back. Okay, that's two to-do items. Anybody else? Any more?
Do we have any updates on the COC website and how that's going for communication purposes?
I do not, because Brenda was going to oversee an intern, but I think with this massive staffing loss at the city, that's kind of on hold, because I think city staff, to my understanding, are going to be spending a lot of time on the NOFA when that comes out. I think that's taking priority. Kirsten, I'll be quiet and let you address if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna throw something in the chat box there. I'd be happy to look at that. That's kind of my wheelhouse from a communications perspective. So, and I was involved with some of the student collaboration. So, if Brenda and I can get together before she leaves on Friday, so I can at least see what the current status is and see if there isn't something that possibly I can do or that we can figure out to move that forward. I understand it's been built, but I think we need like posting information, all that kind of stuff, I'm guessing. But I'll get a status report and then I can follow up.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Okay, we're carrying on our schedule again as usual, and we're gonna move. Sharon, I guess we got 2 action items. I think we need to just keep touching base about this, though.
Yeah, if we can add it as a standing agenda item, that would be super helpful. And it doesn't necessarily need to be 20 minutes, but I think it's important that we keep moving this forward as a community because it's such a huge crisis response issue for all of our programs.
Yeah, and I really think we need to continue as individuals to talk about the homelessness is the people without homes. And if you don't have housing in your community, no matter how robust the services we provide, low barrier, high barrier, any barrier, doesn't matter. how great it is. If there's nowhere for them to go and there's nowhere with a roof, whether it's an apartment or a home, they're going to stay. The system's at a clog. It's at a standstill. And so housing is integral to the solution, regardless of what you feel about any of the other issues. You need houses at the end in order to take care of homelessness, or we're not going to be solving the problem. And we all need to talk like that, though, because there's a lot of talk in the community that it's not a housing issue. And it's just not, it's absolutely not true. We know that from on the ground.
Yep.
But we need to be okay with saying that and talking about it continually.
And I think
He has
suggested, oh, sorry, go ahead. Dale.
No, Edie suggested meeting in 2 weeks. Again, follow up.
Well, meeting's not over yet. Oh, do you want to continue the housing part of this COC conversation? We're going to have a special meeting. I guess I'm going to introduce, Becky's going to talk about the NOFA process, but I want to give you a heads up that the NOFA process, we usually don't have a meeting in August. We could even decide to have a meeting in August. But NOFA process is going to go so fast that it'll need to be approved before the scheduled September meeting at the end of September. So we're going to call a special meeting at the beginning of September to approve the NOFA and have the discussion about our application and approve it. So we could just keep the August meeting, see if the NOFA is ready by then, continue this discussion, and then move into NOFA in August if we can, or call a special meeting in September as well. I'm going to leave it up to the group. But I'm totally okay, due to the fact that I am the director of the Low Income Housing Consortium, having a special meeting about housing. I think there's a crisis. It'll be in the Inlander tomorrow, my editorial.
I think we should do the special meeting.
So we want a special meeting in 2 weeks on this. And we'll spend an hour and a half on housing and come up with a real plan as a group.
I concur, yeah.
Does anybody think that's just not good? We're totally not trying to push this on anybody. This is a surprise to me.
I will attend. Just let me know when and where.
Great. Daniel, you're an important piece of this machine.
I'm here to help you guys.
Special meetings in 2 weeks. And then we'll take the NOFA on the timeline from there, whether that's a late August meeting or early September, but we'll deal with that at a later time. But I do want to let you all know that we're probably going to have a special meeting on the NOFA. Does that kind of, Debbie, does that give you enough of a lead in there on NOFA? Because you're to the next agenda item.
Becky is.
Oh, Becky, I have my old agenda.
Yeah.
This is Kelly with the city. One thing to keep in mind for that meeting in September is the CHHS board does meet that first Wednesday, that's September 1st. So if we're looking for staffing for notes or things like that, that might conflict. So just wanted to keep that out there. So if you guys weren't thinking of that.
And Kelly, Debbie and I'll keep in close contact with you regarding the date so that we don't set it incorrectly and spread staff too thin, because I'm very aware of the staffing issues. But so Debbie, you'll kind of be the one to keep me informed of the timeline, right? Or Becky, you're in charge of this part?
Yeah, so I'll just jump in here about the NOFA. So as you're talking about when we're going to have that special meeting, it really is going to depend on when the NOFA drops, because I'm kind of planning our work thus far based on previous years and what the NOFA dictated for timeline. So we're operating on that. We're trying to get things moving as quickly as possible and through and ready, obviously, to the submission deadline. But typically the NOFA is due mid to late September. And that's where usually in the NOFA, there's a requirement that we post the completed COC approved application package with a priority listing 15 days before we submit it to HUD. So it's kind of a community awareness of what we're doing. And so that's where we need it to be approved towards the beginning of September. Of course, we'll be mindful of CHHS and doing minutes and things like that, because that's something that's always also required to be submitted. But we'll adjust that date accordingly based on what the NOFA says. The NOFA has not dropped yet. We were anticipating it being dropped already, but I think it'll be here very soon. So staff has already been working on compiling HMIS performance or CMIS performance and financial performance information. It's been provided to providers so that they can review their performance and then they provide a narrative in response, so that way they can share with the funding and RFP committee barriers that may have impacted what they're seeing in project performance. That went out to providers early this month. Right now, providers are working on their renewal applications. They're due on Friday, actually. At that point, staff will be scoring Housing First assessments to create what's known as, the Housing First assessment. Then it's compiled with the funding and RFP committee's score on the project performance piece. And then those two amounts are basically added to create a score out of 100. And then that's how we rank projects for that initial ranking list. If there is additional funds or new money in the NOFA, then we'll put out a RFP for new projects. And that will be, in August. It'll be a really tight turnaround, because there are a couple of other things that have to happen, like a community meeting we were doing, so the community can weigh on which projects we should select. Some of this should be familiar to you that have already been involved on the COC board, but once the NOFA drops, I'll send some more information out so that way the board is aware of kind of the details of the NOFA. And during August, about mid-August, the funding and RFP committee will do their scoring. Like I say, that will create the initial ranking list. And if there's new money available, that with new projects will be ranked and recommendations will be provided to all of you. And that's where at the special meeting, we'll go through the ranking list, those recommendations from the committee, and then also talk about the consolidated application narratives, which I already described how the consolidated application really goes through all of our strategies on how we work to address homelessness for each population. Also talking about some HMIS performance information that's included with our submission. Staff is going to be really tight turning the consolidated application narratives around. We're all kind of pulling double duty here. So anticipation to try to have the consolidated application narratives done probably mid-August if possible, so that way we can get at least an initial draft out to everyone, give you some time to read it so you can provide feedback, because that's what we're going to need. We'll probably see questions about what our community is doing around racial disparity, as well as what we were doing before COVID-19 precautions and how we are addressing things. The application focuses mostly on the portion of the homeless crisis response system that is, housing through, moving them on out of the system. We minorly talk about things with shelter, but COC is really focused on how are we moving people through the system to ultimately get them housed appropriately for whatever that may look like for that client. So we really stick to those housing interventions. So that's a little bit about what to expect with the application. Like I say, the NOFA hasn't dropped, so I don't know actual deadlines for things, but I would anticipate needing all of your time late August and into September, so we can turn things around really quickly. There won't be much wiggle room. I'll also be asking the county, Tim, I'll be asking you for a letter to include with our application to say that our consolidated application agrees with your consolidated plan. So please know that will be coming. It'll, again, be a tight turnaround. I apologize to everybody that I'll just be asking you to turn things around really quickly, but it's kind of the name of the game when it comes to COC. Are there any questions?
Okay, Becky, we look forward to providing as much input as we possibly can and helping you out in any way possible. And having a special meeting if the timing determines that that's necessary, and whatever we can do to help.
So can I ask a question, Becky? So you at this point do not know anything about bonus projects or redistribution of funds?
No, not right now. I'm sure we'll probably see some new money just because of all of the money that's been coming out to address homelessness. So I would imagine we would see some additional funds in the NOFA. Assuming we stay in line with new things they've offered in previous NOFAs, we will have the ability to reallocate from existing projects if the board deems that appropriate. And then we can do new projects if that's something that we want to do. We'll go through that once we get to that point, because it gets a little complex when we talk about the impacts to the decisions we make in the ranking list. And I'm also happy to do some technical assistance for board members if you want to talk about what to expect and get some background information so you're up to speed for that meeting. Happy to provide that assistance to you.
Okay, any other questions for Becky? Becky, the one this ties into both the amount of time the NOFA is going to take and ties back to our housing conversation. And we touched base briefly about it earlier today. And Kirsten, I want you to kind of hear this, because one of the things, I got a call from a CHHS board member yesterday, very concerned, and knowing them head of the Low Income Housing Consortium, that due to staff constraints, the decision has been made because of resource allocation internally that the home dollars, we're not going to do an RFP this year as a city. And I guess that directly, and listening to you talk about how now you've switched over from housing back over to help with the NOFA, to me, it directly affects housing, which does affect homelessness and all these systems we're working on. And so, I'd love to meet with you next week, because I think we could do the home RFP and just use the housing trust fund scoring, because as a region, we're going to have a bunch of applications in with the housing trust fund that the state will score, and we can use those, and that'll be a public process. But I just worry, what else are we getting tugged away from at the city with the staffing at only 60%? It's
Sure. I'll speak to the home RFP. So the intention with home, to better inform what we would put in the home RFP, we intended to do an RFI to get an idea of what projects are already out there, so we know how close, because home requires projects to start within 12 months of funds being committed. And so it was important for us to be able to do the RFI. So a little bit about my capacity. You're right that so I'm currently managing the home program. I also manage some CDBG funded capital projects. We have our loan clerk for our single family rehab portfolio that is out for an unknown period of time. I'm filling in for her as well. So I'm stretched really thin. I think priority was given to the COC NOFA so we could be prepared for that, because if we don't score well, then we can lose projects. I agree with you that it would be ideal to do the RFI. It is not off my plate. I just don't have the capacity to do it right now with all of the other things I'm being asked to do. And the COC NOFA is just a huge, huge list. And unfortunately, I need to be able to provide that technical guidance to be able to make sure it gets done and on an expedited timeline. I think the RFI we need to do so we can inform our home RFP. And so it's kind of been this chain reaction. Unfortunately, there's only so many of us left, so many of us left to be able to do the work. And so we have to prioritize. I'm looking forward to our conversation about your idea for the home RFP. I'm certainly interested in that conversation and how we can balance these different priorities. And I do agree that one thing does have a domino effect, because we know that we need housing, and development of housing takes multiple years. So, right, if we need housing now, we're looking at 3 years or more before we're going to actually have that unit ready for someone to move in. So it is a priority, which is why I wanted to do the RFI. it's just kind of how things have left. Kirsten, do you want to add anything to what I said?
Yeah, thank you, Becky. So, yeah, I mean, we absolutely are in a, critical stance for staffing. And every day we are prioritizing, time and what needs to happen. So, we are absolutely open to ideas. We've had many conversations. We're trying to balance conversations and brainstorming, which is actually getting work done as well. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible. We are looking at, any and all opportunities to do, possibly, project employees, contract work, things that, we can, quickly get people to, do some of that work that, doesn't require as much, as Becky mentioned, technical information or skill, regarding the issue. So totally open to ideas. And trying to make it all work as best as we can. And Becky is definitely, all the staff are pulled in a lot of directions, but Becky knows too much about too many things. And so, she, has been pulled a little bit more. And so we've been having ongoing discussions about that and, managing that as we go. So, I do think it makes sense to, have kind of a prioritization and creative solutions conversation, to kind of see how that works. So let us chat internally as a staff, and then maybe we can reach out in the next, few days to, kind of share what we come up with and go from there. Does that work?
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna just send you a couple of quick ideas tonight, just so you can include them in your brainstorming. But I appreciate it, and I just see you getting pulled in so many different directions, and all of the staff. And but let's keep moving forward on our agenda because I'm way off my timeline. And were there any other questions about the NOFA process before we move on? Okay, RFP committee, Brenda and Kirsten, did you want to kind of both tag team on this one?
Yes. First, I want to really send a thank you to the COC RFP committee. They did an amazing job with getting this done. I don't know if there was record time ever for a RFP process, but I'm just going to say that there was, and this was it. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of them personally. They did a great job with the applications, with processing all of the information. And so just a big shout out to them. Some of them are on the call today, and they will be helpful to answer any questions. So there were 3 applicants for the RFP, and they were Salvation Army, Jules Helping Hands, and the Guardians Foundation. And they were based on 100 points of scoring. And some of the criteria were the overall proposal, their homeless and crisis response, racial equity, a staffing plan, and of course, a cost proposal. And at the end of evaluation with the committee, the score, and after scoring, conversations and evaluation. And I'm just saying this, drum roll, I suppose, but I'm saying this in this meeting because Kirsten did announce this and has spoken with the providers. The Guardians Foundation received scoring of 493. Salvation Army received a scoring of 477, and Jules Helping Hands received a scoring of 456. I'm going to send it over to Kirsten for next steps, and then we will respond to questions.
So my understanding is that that we take the recommendation. So the RFP committee is sharing those scores with the board, and then the board needs to approve who moves forward or which agency moves forward. Brenda, would you be able to share the summary sheet that kind of goes through the categories, or is that handy?
Yes.
I think it just might be a little bit easier to see visually than, so you can see the different categories that it was that the applications were ranked or were reviewed with. So the process would be now that the COC board would vote to approve the whichever agency to move forward to go into the development of a contract, which would then be presented to City Council for approval.
My sound is going in and out. Can you tell? It's Jules Helping Hands, Salvation Army, and who's the third one?
The Guardians Foundation.
I can't see everybody if somebody is trying to speak. So if you have questions, ask away. I know you're all just looking at the sheet, but. Shall we do a stop sharing on this and so we can see everybody and see if there's any questions? See if people can vote today or where everybody's at. Because my understanding of the process, and I could be totally wrong, is we had a COC RFP committee. Brenda convened them. They reviewed the 3 applications. They brought forward a recommendation. It's up to us to move it forward for contract development, and then the contract would go before City Council.
Ben, this is Tim Crowley, Spokane County. I'd like to see it move forward, the motion, and approve the award.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Angela Chapman, I second.
All right. Now, is there any discussion on the motion to move it forward for contract development to go to the City Council? With no discussion, I would call the question, and all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And with that, it's moving forward for contract development. Thank you very much. I really appreciate Brenda putting that RFP committee together. Thank you to Kirsten for reaching out to the applicants today as we talked this through this morning. And thank you to everybody on the RFP committee that participated. It's much appreciated because that is a lot of work to go through all those applications. Okay.
Is it okay if I speak? I'm not a member of the board.
Yes, Edie.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to let you all know that Volunteers of America and Transitions looked very seriously at this RFP as a partnership with the VOA doing the evening, the sheltering at night, and Transitions doing the day services. We find that facility to be dangerous. We think we have a lot of concerns about line of sight. We had a lot of concerns about there's no kitchen in that facility. So I think the COC needs to know that that facility is really not adequate for what we need. We were concerned about danger of rapes in the back building. So if you have a chance, I would encourage you to go by that facility and look at it. We really did want a partner to do this, but we just felt like the facility was really dangerous.
Thank you, Edie. Okay. We've talked about the September meeting. Is Jan still on? Jan had to jump off, but Jan and I met on Monday for 2 hours and tried to update the 5-year plan with the reports from the subcommittees. I wish they would have been in the room. I wish I would have had somebody more knowledgeable in the room with me with historical knowledge. And so Jan and I, we did spend 2 hours on it, but we didn't get very far on the update. I did check with staff this morning, and Becky, thank you for emailing me back, because it's not a necessity, but it's really important that we update the 5-year plan, but I think we should all do it together. And I think it'd be really educational for us as we look at the 5-year plan to end homelessness, and we're not just treating it as a document that we plug and play, but that we update. So Jane and I talked at the end of our meeting in our frustration of not getting very far, that it would be a good group activity, and we haven't met in person. And so potentially we were thinking maybe like in January of 22, we try to set almost a retreat for 4 hours or 6 hours and get that plan updated and go through it. And we can all ask questions. And I don't know what everybody thinks about that, but maybe if we set the date like 4 months in advance and set it aside, it would work for all of us. And we could have all the subcommittees there. We could have the board members there. We could have staff there. Because just plugging and playing on that doesn't really seem like the update to me when it seems like it really needs to be all of us. And a lot of timelines need to be adjusted on that plan because COVID took out a lot of things and things got worse instead of better, not through any operational fault, but the housing crisis has hit. So I think there's quite a few updates that probably need to be made to it. Thoughts?
I think that's a great idea, Ben. This is Dale. I think that's how we that's how we initiated the 5-year plan to begin with. I mean, we got together as work groups, and so I think we should renew that. So.
Yeah, I agree. This is Tim, Spokane County. I think we need to look at geography and look at what has happened in the last few years. A lot has happened, and from a policy perspective, and take that into account. And of course, with the city's app and the City of Spokane Valley's app, there's more information that's available that we did not have. So I'd certainly support it.
Is there any other thoughts? Yeah, I think.
Okay. Here, Ben, is that you could have the committees work on updating it, at least getting you up to date in the meantime. That way, when you have your meeting, you have a little bit more updated information, and then you can work on updating it instead of figuring out where we're at. It might be helpful and a little bit more in terms of time saving. Just a recommendation.
I hear you, Becky, but I want to plan it for January so we can really let you guys focus on the NOFA and we all get through some of this right now. Okay. All right. The next is we had a conversation that I took in a really probably dramatic direction at the executive committee meeting. So I just want to say, I guess I'll start this conversation off, and we have 15 minutes. And so I'm going to try to keep it briefer than 15 minutes. But that is that we've had a lot of staff leave the city, 5 people in the last 5 months, or 6 months. And as we've talked about at this meeting, what that does is puts severe strain on the city staff, who is the COC's collaborative partner. And that can come across as little things like the time to take minutes, or it can mean that focusing on the NOFA means that staff have to focus on other issues. I don't know who our contact at the COC is going to be for things that Brenda used to help me out with administratively. The concerns have been raised by people that have left the city, and not anybody here, but just higher ups, asking them to use programmatic dollars for capital dollars. I've had 3 different employees approach me about that, and that concerns me as the fiscally responsible agent for the COC. And then the COC has been completely shut out of the regional shelter work group, which is integral to homelessness. And I am wondering who would, from the COC, would be best to attend a meeting. I'm going to request a meeting with Kirsten, and Mr. Patterson and the mayor, just to talk about just COC, collaborative applicant, concerns about the fact that the city is only at 60% staffing, and that everybody that's working is doing 2 to 3 jobs down there. David was, if you didn't get that the last 2 meetings, David was under a lot of pressure. So I'm wondering who would be interested in attending that meeting and if I set one up. And I know we're a quiet bunch sometimes, but the executive committee did talk about this for a while. Everybody executive committee agreed there's a concern, but we just didn't know what to do. So we should probably go talk about it.
I would participate. This is Jan.
If I could add in there too, I think the conversation is a great idea and a meeting about it. Just also for awareness, we are in the process of doing requisitions for several of the positions. So that is under in the process, and we're working to get people moved into specific positions and then also hiring more. So of course, that's never a quick process with the city, but we are moving in that direction. So I think honestly, it's something that we're going to have to continue to discuss on a regular basis because if all the stars align and we have 5 great employees here by the within the next few months, then we may be back in business in terms of being able to meet all the needs across the board and not having to prioritize in a way that that makes us not feel great. So just so you know that those positions are being promoted, or those will be released here probably this week.
Thanks, Kirsten. Jan, I heard yes, and Dale, did I hear you say yes? You want to go with me?
I'll go with you.
Okay.
Because it's getting down to morals and ethics, And for me, you're disabled. It's crazy. Transparency needs to be present. So.
Okay. I will start working on that tomorrow. All right, with that, we're going to end 12 minutes early because it's the end of the day and we got through everything. Did we miss anything you wanted to talk about today that we didn't mention? Because it seemed like a jam-packed meeting, but we actually got done early. Anybody? All right, with that, I again want to thank Matt and I want to thank Brenda, and I appreciate you, wish you best future endeavors.
Yes.
And thank everybody that attended the meeting today. And Daniel, I look forward to working with you on solutions. Thank you so much. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care, everybody.
Everybody have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Ben. Okay.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care, guys.
Have a great evening.